So the big news actually, late last week over the weekend was, the Steubenville, Ohio rape trial came to a verdict, and they found the two, teenagers who were filmed, abusing a young lady guilty. They were found guilty. They're going to jail.
All right. That's fair. They did in fact rape that young lady, so then they are being punished as per our justice system. Good.
Well, it's not quite as simple as that. You see, yes, they're going to jail, but the way that it's been talked about in the news media is pretty troubling. CNN, for example, they're, I guess, sympathetic to the rapists.
I don't know if I would say that they were actively sympathetic to the rapists, but what I will say, Dasha, is that whatever the hell happened there, I don't know what they were doing or what they thought was, because I feel like it would be disingenuous for me to say that actively that they were they were genuinely sympathetic to the rapists. But I will say, after watching that clip, I don't know what the hell, who the hell decided that was the proper framing for that particular story, because it was problematic as all get out. I believe we have that on the board. Aaron, do we?
I believe so. Give me one second.
Oh, no, yeah, let's check that clip, sir.
This is CNN Breaking News.
I'm Candy Crowley in Washington. Reliable Sources is just ahead, but first, a breaking story we're following. Two-star high school football players in Steubenville, Ohio, have been found guilty of raping a West Virginia teenager. The story has attracted national attention. The judge just ruled a few moments ago. Listen in.
In this case, regarding the charges of rape, both defendants, Malik Richmond and Trenton Mays, are committed to the Department of Youth Services for a minimum period of 1 year, a maximum period till you're 21.
Again, this case was played out in juvenile court. That is why there is a judge, no jury. He decided on the verdict, as well as you heard there talking about the sentence. We want to go now to CNN's Poppy Harlow. She is in Steubenville, has been covering this trial. I cannot imagine, having just watched this on the feed coming in, how emotional that must have been sitting in the courtroom.
I've never experienced anything like it, Candy. It was incredibly emotional, incredibly difficult, even for an outsider like me, to watch what happened as these two young men that had such promising futures, star football players, very good students, literally watched as they believed their life fell apart. What?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What? Again, I say, did anyone stop for a moment and say, how does it sound? How is this going to sound? This copy, if they were reading a teleprompter, it's like, who read that and they go, no, this is what we should say. This is what we should say. We should man, it was emotional in that courtroom. Forget the fact that there was a girl who was dragged around unconscious and used as a rape doll. Forget that part. Let's talk about the fact that these dudes, man, they believe that their life is over.
They're promising lives.
They're promising life. I mean, my God. I mean, this was an emotional time. And here's the thing about this, Dasha, which is why I said, I'm a little bit worried, nervous about, how it's being framed. But the fact is, I understand that people might be a little bit, freaked out by what's happening, especially if because that's the thing. They kept talking about how good grades they got and all this other thing, that they were good, they were, stars. So I can see how someone, especially someone close to the family would be like, my God, my child's life is basically changed. I understand that argument. I do not understand that argument being used as a news angle when you were covering the rape trial of a 16-year-old girl dragged from place to place. As the parent, as a friend of those kids, yeah, I could say, oh man, my God, it's over for them, man. I feel for them, man. I mean, I don't understand what happened, with so-and-so. This is bad, but not as a town, as a school, as a news organization. The story is not that these kids aren't going to be able to live awesome lives. The story is that they raped a 16-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I gotta push back. I gotta say that, that CNN, had a sympathetic tone towards those kids in a way that is incredibly troubling, considering it didn't take into account the victim in all of this.
Well, you say pushback. I'm not saying that it didn't have some sort of tone to it. I'm saying yes. I believe there was a tone to that. I'm not saying that like I don't believe when they were putting it together they were like F that rape, F the girl who got raped, blah blah blah. But I do believe they chose a horribly bad framing of this particular story for their news.
But the product of it is F that girl who got raped.
Now you can make that argument. I'm not going to fight with you about that.
Regardless if, and I think the point that's actually particularly, that's worth looking at is the fact that it was so easy for CNN to take that role. I don't think if they just were like, if they didn't mean it intentionally, if they didn't mean to be like F that girl, if that was just sort of the easiest way to go about doing this, then what does that say about society at large? That the easiest way to go about reporting this thing is to have sympathy for those boys and not for the girl.
See, I'm not even sure that they chose the easiest way of reporting it. I believe that this is a bad choice. I don't know if it was the easiest, but they probably were looking for some angle. Like, hold on, I think there's more to this.
One of the young men, Malik Richmond, when that sentence came down, he collapsed. He collapsed in the arms of his attorney, Walter Madison. He said to him, "My life is over. No one is going to want me now." Very serious crime here. Both found guilty of raping the 16-year-old girl at a series of parties back in August. Alcohol-fueled parties. Alcohol, a huge part in this. But Trent Mays was also found guilty on a second count, and that is of felony.
See right there. Like, my question is like, why are you yelling alcohol? Oh, huge part. It was alcohol. It's like,
yeah.
But is that cool? Does that make it more okay because there was so much alcohol in it? So we really should be more sympathetic to the rapist? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
This is terribly framed.
Yeah.
Please note, I'm all about all the beef that CNN has caught. No, I agree with that. That it is, they deserve it. I just don't genuinely believe they thought when they came on there that this is, let's be problematic. But holy cheese on a cracker, they stepped in all sorts of stuff, and the framing on it. I watched the clip and I'm just like, but why do you think that was wise? Why did you think that this is the way to tell this story?
There were too many people had their eyes on this for all of a sudden there to be no one to say this is not the best course of action.
Not one human being looked at the copy on that and was like, cause by the way, you know the story that I thought of when I heard the trial, the thing came out? The first thing that came to my head is a year or 2 years enough for, basically, raping an unconscious girl, dragging her around party to party. I was wondering, I didn't think that was, I thought that was the problem. And I was wondering, like, if I was that girl, if I was the girl who got raped or the family of that, would I think justice was served simply by 1 year or 2 years of these kids' lives? I mean, because yes, they might not be able to go to college next year, but at the same time, 1 year or 2 years, they can come back out, especially in that town. They might be able to, a town that's sympathetic, they might be able to find jobs, as different things, maybe work at the school or something like that. Like, there's various things. Huh?
Nope, they can't work at the school.
They can't.
They'll be sex offenders for the rest of their lives.
Oh wow.
They'll be registered sex offenders.
And that won't go away. That won't go away because they're still minors at the moment. And so that won't go away when they're 21 I
don't believe so. I believe they have to register with the registry, and the registry doesn't take into account underage, overage. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I want that checked on because I'm not sure about that. I mean, like, I'm not saying that school would hire them, but I feel as if like they can still make lives for themselves fairly easily after the next 2 to 3 years. It might not be the awesome lives that they thought they were going to have, but I would argue that doesn't outrank what's happening here. And so in my mind, I hear that's the story I hear. But for somehow the CNN producers or the segment producer for this heard that and was like, the tragedy that is around these children. My God, they collapsed. It was emotional. It's emotional for them. And I'm like,
in fairness, nobody's approached the story from this angle. That's some new CNN stuff. I mean, CNN's having some troubles with direction anyway. So This is just, I feel like this is just the peak of them having a little bit of trouble with what they want to tell us on the news. They have no idea what they want to tell us at all. So it's now finally came to a head. So maybe there'll be some changes after we all come down on them.
Do you believe that CNN's been failing?
But they've never been like, well, what about these rapists though? Sorry guys.
Well, because that's not the story. The story, I guess, to Dash's point, the idea here is that, the story is not about these rapists, it's about these poor kids who are whose lives are, it's not about rapists who took advantage of a 16-year-old girl.
Well, wouldn't you have to then couch that in a larger story about teenage misconduct than just pick these two kids and be like, these poor kids?
I mean, but maybe the story gets better.
Legal use of a minor in nudity-oriented material because he took a photograph of the victim laying naked on the floor that night. Trent Mays will serve 2 years in a juvenile detention facility.
Someone explain something to me. Raping the girl gets you 1 year. But taking a picture of her gets you the same amount of time? What?
I keep saying I don't think that we as a country have made peace with exactly how terrible rape actually is.
I was like, oh,
and that in and of itself, I think is part of the, it's not a rationale. I think it's just I honestly think that for CNN, it's just like, this is the most appropriate way to talk about this. Because because there was no one there to problematize it, that means that there was a vast amount of all kinds of privilege in regards to sexual violence and gender violence, rape in the CNN copy room that allowed that to make it to air.
Do you think there's a possibility that this is one of those things where it was a weekend, they didn't have their full staff and so it only maybe had one eye on it and then the next person didn't really look at it, for content. They just was making sure that the facts were right and then just went from there and that this was just a massive fail, just because it wasn't really looked at as opposed to a massive just ignoring of the privilege that was involved? Do you think there's a possibility of that? I don't know. I'm literally just throwing this out there.
Well, I mean, the thing with privilege is that you can't, it's not that someone ignored the privilege. If you've got it, that means that you just ignore the fact that it's important to get it right. You ignore the significance of getting the story right about rape. It's not important enough to make sure that the angle is depicted accurately, that to understand that we, for someone to let that go, that means that there's no understanding that we have a problem with rape culture in this country. None whatsoever. And so because of that, it's like, oh, we just sort of, put the story together, the facts are right, and, and maybe the reporter sitting in the room, I'm sure, like watching teenage boys cry in a room is not easy, but you have to think about what it is that those boys did. And just because they have good grades doesn't mean, that should not somehow create a sort of a vacuum of violence. It's not like, well, they were good kids except for this one little thing that they did and there was alcohol involved. So really it's a tragedy.
So much alcohol.
Which by the way, there was someone tweeted at me actually a Tumblr of all of the responses from the internet about the verdict. We've got
what was it? What was the name of that? From Privilege or something?
It's publicshaming.tumblr.com.
Yeah.
Man, listen. And so what they did was they compiled the tweets and some Reddit comments, which I actually am not surprised by that if you've ever been in Reddit before. But yeah, I'm throwing shade at Reddit big time. Yeah. They've got a problem with gender. And Facebook. And I mean, just people talking all kinds of slut shaming. I feel so sorry for those 16-year-old boys found guilty in Steubenville. They just got a guilty verdict for the Steubenville case, which is fucked up. And also talking about the girl and talking about the fact that like she was drunk, she was asking for it.
Oh my God. I can't. Hold on. There's more. To this mountains. I'm just waiting. You keep thinking that they're gonna fix this. It's gonna become better as the story goes on.
Malik Richmond will serve 1 year on that one count that he was found guilty for. But I want to let our viewers listen because for the first time in this entire trial, we have now heard from the two young men. Trent Mays stood up apologizing to the victim's family in court. After him, Malik Richmond. Listen.
I would truly like to apologize to Elena, her family, my family, and the community. No picture should have been sent around, let alone even taken. That's all, sir. Thank you.
I'm sorry, wait. Did he apologize for the picture and not the raping?
Mm-hmm.
Anything you'd like to say, Malik?
I would like to apologize to you people.
I had no intention to do anything like that. I'm sorry to put you guys through this. But just like... I'm sorry, I didn't want to.
You know what? You probably feel really, really sorry when you realize that your raping is going to make your life a little bit harder now.
Yeah.
You might break out into some tears. I mean, I'm not saying that the dude might not be feeling something, but you know who else felt something? The girl that got dragged around and raped on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't know what the law is in Ohio, but I know at least in the state of California that once you're on the sex offender registry list, you're on it for life, regardless of when you did it, because it's about who the offense was against and not the offender themselves. And so they would be registered sex offenders against a minor and also circulating material of a minor.